Brad, what I need is culture fit. Got
What
it?
does that mean? What does that even
Got
mean?
it? I
don't-
need it.
No.
I just need more.
What?
More culture fit. I need more.
It'd be
More
better
culture.
if you said more
More
cowbell. I
culture.
don't. Hiring for culture can be full of traps and issues.
Today, we're going to give you 3 tips on how to avoid those traps.
So look, if you have any thoughts on this, please comment. We want to hear from you. We have some ideas. We think they're okay, but you're a lot smarter than us. So jump in the comments. If you've ever been a part of a situation like this or you've seen it, let us know.
And we think this is super important. We work with a lot of organizations to help them define their cultures.
All right, so let's get into it. As we see it for today's conversation, we're going to keep it simple. 3 issues. They're not the main issues, they're just 3 issues. 1, confusion. 2, sourcing candidates. And lastly, interview process issues. Keith, when we think about confusion, what are we talking about?
If someone says, hey, you're in the interview process, I'm going to handpick somebody, and I'm going to say, you're going to hire for culture. It's happened to me before. What does that mean? So then you walk into the debrief or whatever it looks like, and they say, okay, how do they fit for the culture? What's your answer? Often it's, no, I think they're a good fit. I don't think they're a good fit. Ask the question why. It's a feel thing, and that is just loaded with all kinds of issues. I think the first thing, and Rodney said some of the most, maybe not the main ways. I think this is the first main way. Rodney, I'm curious to get your thoughts on it, is definition of what your culture looks like.
I would definitely agree. We could be on the same team and we could think culture fit means completely different things. Clearly defining what your culture is and getting input from everybody on the team is absolutely our first tip.
It takes time. It takes effort. It takes energy. But if you define your culture, what it looks like to live it, and then apply that to your interview process, that clears up a lot of that confusion that comes from what does hiring for culture look like.
And we get into this a little bit later, but sometimes that we hire for culture fit or hire for culture fit is sometimes because of that confusion, I think interpreted as we'll hire who's going to get along best with the team. Hire who you like best. Hire who you get along with best. All of these issues, all of these things that don't necessarily solve what a team is trying to do. When you're trying to hire, you're hiring to solve business problems. You have a gap in skills and abilities, and you're trying to bring the right person in. And it's just like, well, hire for culture fit. And it's like, okay, well, I really got along with Tina, but I didn't get along with Bob. So their skills matter, but all things being equal, I'm going to hire the person I like more.
Number 2, and that is how we actually source these candidates.
Candidate sourcing. The thing we want to focus on here, because there's a lot of issues or a lot of topics around sourcing candidates that we can talk about. We want to talk about resumes and how they're read, and specifically bias around things like names. There's a really good book out there called, I just forgot the name of it.
It's a good book. I just forgot the name of it.
It's called Freakonomics. When it comes to reading resumes, a couple things that play in. Names. In Freakonomics, they talk about naming conventions and how white names and black names affect how we think about people, how we place them in our heads in a socioeconomic bucket. There have been a couple studies that have actually broken this down and looked at how it plays out in the hiring process. And in general, it's not a good thing.
There's past work experience. There's schools. There's like, what school did you graduate from? And so when we talk about culture fit and we think about the selection process and bias, as Rodney put it, we ascribe our, whatever it may be, our preconceived notions that maybe it says, Podunk Community College versus Harvard, same degree, different work experience, whereas this person's work experience just crushes the competition. But I look at where they graduated school from, and maybe they aren't a culture fit based on bias. Going back to point 1, we haven't defined what that looks like. So that stuff easily creeps in. So quick solutions on this one.
Hold on real quick. I want to throw a point in on that. But the pedigree, you hear this a lot in conversations for hiring executives or hiring people in general. What's the pedigree, which is kind of code for where they go to school. What are people who went to that school known for? Whether or not they're actually a fit to that, they get ascribed to these qualities, and that's what we're talking about in this culture fit conversation. For
That's
sure.
right. So what's important about this? It depends on how you define your culture. There are law firms that will say it's our culture. We only hire from Harvard. Check out
Shout
the
out
show
to
Suits.
Suits.
Check out Suits, right? If that's your culture, then that's going to be part of your hiring process. But if it's not, and you want a broad stroke of experience and background, this goes into solution number 2. Remove names and remove the actual university, not the degree, not the degree type, but the actual university from the resume during the screening process.
That brings us to our third topic of the day, topic du jour, if you will. The interview process is fraught with things like bias. We've said it before, but when we're looking at the interview process, the first thing I want to bring up, and I don't know what Keith wants to talk about here, but the thing I want to talk about is who gets picked to run the interview process, to actually be the person sitting in the interview. Is it the person most qualified to interview another person to join your company, to join your team?
Is this making sense? Have you experienced this before? If it has, in the comments below, just put MIC, more in common. Check it out.
Or is it the person that's most available? Is it the A player on the team? Is it the most liked person on the team? Who is it that's actually getting picked for the process? And this directly affects what gets set as your culture fit and who's coming in the team and how they're able to come into the team.
All of that and what you said earlier about this leads to who do I like versus who does the top performer like or someone else on the team like. But also, as it's been scientifically proven time and time again, that when it comes to eyewitness testimony and a criminal investigation is the worst way to prove that someone is guilty, because our memories and our assessments and our analyses are fraught with all kinds of just things that get in the way. Well, that same thing applies to your interview process. So is your interview process just human to human assessment? Is it trained human to human assessment? Does it include other things like aptitude assessments or whatever else might be part of the interview process that gives you a more holistic view other than, no, they answer my questions really well. I liked the way they answer my questions and I seem to get along with them.
Our tip is to invest in your hiring process. Invest. Train people that are going to be interviewing. Make sure that they're qualified. Pick the most qualified person, not the most available person. And then also back to this whole idea of define what you're looking for in your team. What are the missing attributes? What are the missing skills?
All right. So just remember, 3 of the core problems to defining culture fit are confusion, not knowing what it means, how we source candidates, specifically in the resume review section of the sourcing process, and 3, the interview process itself, who's doing the interviewing, and all the bias that goes in.
That's right. And we have some solutions for you. 1, define your culture. And then, I know this is going to be wild, but after you define it, try and live it. Live your values. Live them every day. The people that work in your culture will know if it's actually your culture or not. And people that you're interviewing will actually pick it up. Number 1, define it, live it. 2, remove names, remove universities, remove things that are known to cause bias or let bias creep into the process. Remove them from the review process when you're sourcing candidates. And 3rd, in your interview process, invest in it. Invest in it. Train your interviewers. Pick the person that's most qualified, not most available. And lastly, find what you're hiring for. So you actually have criteria for what your team needs, not just blanket criteria for what the company's looking for, but for what your team is looking for. All right. With all that said, get after it. Have a great day.
And anchor humanity and compassionate.
We need like a anchor up.
Yeah,
Boil
down.
down.
Yeah, anchor down.
Get out there.
Yeah,
Let us know what you think.
Yeah.
Okay, ready?